Hey guys, welcome back to another live Play&Explain video. It's been a while since the last video that came out, but the games are pretty good this summer, so didn't devote too much time for YouTube content. I'm sorry guys, had to grind, but today felt like there was a good time to make a video. So let's go for it. Also hope you enjoyed the last video that we made with Fiasco. Definitely looking forward to producing more of this content if I find other guests that are available and wants to join. Table 1, I think, still a board where we can have quite a decent c-bet frequency. It's not like our opponent has infinite offsuit deuce-X, like if for example and the queen deuce offsuit can't continue in the small blind. But yeah, if you guys enjoyed the hand review with Fiasco, then give me some feedback on that, because I definitely enjoy having other players on and pick their brain a bit, see how they perceive the game and learn something from them. But of course I can also understand if the Play&Explain is more interesting for you, just because there's like more action and you don't talk like an hour for like 3 hands or something. Check 8 offsuit will mix in 3 bets, and this time we will go for it. Mr. One Time, quite a good player that I face like almost every time I sit down to play. So I think he's playing a decent volume. Half pot check on those straight boards. I'll go for the c-bet this time. Definitely important to not always c-bet those hands and then like always check back like a hand like ace-king. Table 2, I think my hand is pretty firmly in the checking category without a backdoor flush draw and with 2 undercuts to the 7. And once we are in the check-check line, we have to play quite passive again on the turn, and our hand has no business anyway betting. Expecting like a half pot to 3/4 bet from imposition, but it goes check-check, and now we actually have a pretty high EV check with our hand. And definitely, we definitely have to consider bluff catching and bluff raising with those sort of holdings, because everything that's stronger than is high, we would value bet on the river, right? So our checking range on the river are give ups, ace high bluff catchers, and then some traps. Table 1, quite a bad board for us, so we need to be careful and do decent amount of checking. Table 2, definitely going to range check in those positions versus the button flat, who should in theory have quite a condensed range, but with the whale behind, he might actually be a bit wider as well. And queen check suited, while again on the turn I don't get to bet too much. Queen check seems fairly decent, and let's go ahead and try to put in our stacks. Table 2, I think like a half pot delay c-bet strategy would be pretty nice. Always have to jam on the river now. I have phenomenal blockers, and yeah, would give up a hand with a spade in it, but this hand, once we decide to bet the turn, I definitely think that we have to always chip. And gonna get bluff catch quite often, but what can you do, right? We need some bluffs. And decided to go for the check with the pocket freeze. Interesting enough, our opponent checked down 10 high. Let's hope he doesn't hero call here and goes to the passive line again. Ooh, that sucks. Got owns there, but still don't mind my play. And his call can't be bad, honestly, because as I said, with a spade I would give up, so the jack and spade is not really blocking bluffs. It's also not blocking 10x, to be fair, but I think unblocking bluffs here is a bit more important anyway. And I'm also never bluffing an ace, so he has a fine hand to call. Like, it's a bluff catcher that has somewhat decent properties. I also wonder what's like the thinnest hand that I can jam. Jack 4 is close. What's like the thinnest hand that I can jam there? I mean, if I have an overpair like jacks, definitely those hands are still strong enough. And for example, a hand like nines probably doesn't reopen the turn too much. So basically I'm mostly wrapping an overpair or a 10, I think. And here we fold this as a check raise. But the reason why I think queen check is a nice bet on the turn is because we get him to fold hands like king queen, king check that dominate queen check. So while I can't, I need to be quite careful to not over c-bet the turn, especially when I don't have a spade. This does seem like the most natural hand to use to me. For example, king check in hearts, or like king queen in hearts. King queen in hearts would never bet the turn, but queen check folding out those stronger hands I think is fine. Gonna go for the free bet, queen check in diamonds, take it down. And we face the donk from the recreational player. Definitely just calling and not really looking to fold, but of course gonna see what he does. Again, nothing to do but call, hoping for ideally no draw completing river, but even when a flush gets there and he doesn't, I mean that's like the worst river in the deck. But even now if he would bet like half pot or something, I would always still call, because you never know what he might show up with. And we have an easy check, and who knows, he might have hand like king 10 or something. Yeah. So we'll wrap down donks 50. Weak pair. And very happily squeezing here. Table 2 we just range bet. I mean, I could definitely also just rip this in, but I wonder versus which line my opponent will make more mistakes. I think maybe versus this line. Here is 9, I don't think is a great hand to bet on the turn. We don't really get him to fold, maybe not even a hand like ace jack. So we mostly get him to fold out weaker ace-x with a flush draw that call on the flop. And the 9 is really bad, like a hand like king 9, 9, 8. Those are all potential bluffing candidates. So I definitely need to catch a decent amount of ace highs here, but I think ace 9 seems like the nut low one. We are a bit deeper, so usually you would always forward queens. I think 160, it's probably still fine, but now I guess the play is go for a small 4-bet and fold if Mr. Servas is jamming. But I think versus him in those positions we should still be committed, because Yeah, I think this is fine. It's not great. But I think it's fine. And now if he jams, Emilio is going to jam all his king. So I think we just get the right price to call, but yeah. Nice to win the first one. That's an amazing run out. So when he overbets and the flush completes, I actually get to donk range, I think. The reason for that is he can overbet the hand on the flop like 7-6 in hearts, and I can never call a weak hand like an air hand on the flop, right? We face the raise, so I think now we have the option between calling and free betting. And I wouldn't even hate, because what hands am I bluffing there, right? I don't have a hand like Queen 9 with a spade that can't call the flop. So I think this wouldn't even be the worst hands to go ahead and bluff. And we take it down. Really interesting hand here. Definitely looking forward to reviewing that one. But yeah, I'm quite confident about the turn donk after facing such a big bet, because basically my range is only strong hands and he can still have weak hands. So this is not saying I have a flush, this is just me betting tiny because I actually am the one who has the advantage now on the turn, the equity advantage. Likely recreational player, just gonna call. And facing the raise, I mean, I could call or free bet. I mean, maybe this is not a hand that the solver chooses to free bet, but it's tough. Like, I need to find some bluffs, and I think this one is a fine candidate. I mean, how bad can it really be, right? We face the check. Now we could start blasting. We could go for another check. I think I like just going and bet myself. I think a recreational player might have like a lot of medium showdown value hands in this line that look to check down and might also check back the turn again. So I think I just go pot, and I mean, this might even be like, I think if I overbet the river, I might actually start to isolate myself. And table 1, I would play overbet check now on the ace turn, utilizing my ace king advantage. Facing a small bet, which doesn't make any sense, but we are happy that he's not betting bigger with our hand. But yeah, when I'm playing super polarized, doesn't really make sense for him to bet the hand like ace 4, ace 9, or yeah, pocket nines, a hand like this. So could even consider donking here, but think this hand is a bit too weak to do that. And here we could, versus recreational, we could do whatever. I don't mind checking back and letting him give me information. I think other decent candidates to bluff raise the turn here would be hands like queen check with the queen in spades, which we would of course also have. So yeah, maybe my hand should just call because it performs so well versus his bluffs, and yeah, not sure. never played this spot in my life before, where I faced the raise on this and a texture like this, so you have to freestyle, right? Table 2, we have to be quite careful on this 6-5-5 board. So my hand definitely could get in and bet sometimes, but overall mostly needs to be careful. And depending on how my opponent plays the flop, this also has an impact on my delay stabbing strategy, but I would probably go ahead and 25 a decent chunk with my ace highs, like, I don't know, ace 10 plus, and start value betting those holdings. But again, a number of strategies are fine here. You could also go 3/4, you could even implement, like, I mean, in theory, overbet would not be a thing for sure, because 3/4 gets there and my opponent should check back 5x. And this player is probably good enough to check back a 5 sometimes, so overbet I would really not like, but I think anywhere between block, half pot to 3/4 would all be fine options here, depending on what you want to value bet. Just important that you have a rough idea how your range looks like. And I think this is a pretty nice candidate to go for a check raise. On paired boards, we do need to raise quite a bit. And also make sure that we don't raise for too big of a sizing. It's not like we try to put in our stacks, even if it, even with a king here. Turn, interesting. So overall my strategy would be block check and like blocking also with a king. So I wonder if queen 10 could also get into the blocking range. But yeah, I'm not sure. But it's close between block and check. The hand does not have great properties of calling down. I mean, of course, I'm definitely calling the small turn bet, but having a 10 in hearts will block, and the queen in spades, like, I mean, the queen in spades not because it's a board pair, but the 10 in hearts blocks a lot of his bluff candidates for sure. Goes for a half pot bet, probably indicating a decent king. I don't know, the hand doesn't have great properties, and it seems like a runout where it's also not super easy to find a lot of bluffs, so I think I'm fine with this. Probably would need to start bluffing a decent chunk of pocket pairs on the turn already. For example, hands like deuces, threes, fours would probably be really great, because even with the small sizing, he already gets me to fold 5x that I check raised on the flop, and then sometimes gets called by some flush draws. And then he also would have those hands to be able to bluff the river. And also might even be able to start bluffing his own 5x also, I think. Table 2, 3/4 check. Roll somewhat low, so let's go for the check this time. With this sizing, he can bet pretty much any pair in those positions. And I don't think that I should have a whole lot of raises. I think if I had the ace in hearts and went for the check back on the flop, then we could go for it, but it's just not a very high frequent play, I don't think so. Interesting spot. 9 and 8 in those positions are not great, because he has 9s and 8s quite often. But it's also a mono board, and mono boards are kind of good for the pre-flop aggressor, because we have more offsuit hands, which actually, while we have, of course, offsuit hands don't make flushes, but a hand like ace-king that has a club is pretty strong on this board. And the sizing here is basically just him saying he has like ace-9, 2-pair, whatever. I mean, I can't really fold with this hand, also not expecting to win, but and yeah, happily checking down, fortunately losing. Here we go, big bet check, and think if I had queen 10 diamonds, I could maybe already start betting this hand, as I already should get him to fold some stronger 10x on the flop, get caught by some draws, has like some hybrid effects. Definitely want to bet some 10x even for the big sizing. It's basically the important thing. And facing the big overbet on the turn, I think we can pure fold here. We have a lot of ace-x, and also hands like kings, queens, jacks would be way better calls, as they have nutted outs to improve on, while queen 10 really doesn't have that. It's drawing dead versus my opponent's sets. Yeah, I wonder if I could have maybe even just folded the ace 4 there, to be honest. I mean, it would be like, in theory, versus a block with top pair, it would just be such a blunder to fold, and he could have the same hand, or should in theory, but yeah. I think it's okay to just call there, and maybe he sometimes has like a hand like jack 7 in clubs or whatever that he found that line with, but I think if he had that hand, I'm not sure if this is the bluff sizing that he would have gone for, but also think with ace 8, this is just too small, honestly. Maybe he plays like an overbet block split, but if I have a weaker 2-pair hand, I'm also often just calling, so yeah, you just miss out on value here, I think. If I have ace 5, I'm not raising the river, so always jamming in those positions. Lose this time. Interesting spot, because with the recreational in the big blind, I am actually incentivized to have some bets, while I would otherwise range check. And this hand seems like fairly nice candidate to go ahead for a c-bet. And interesting turn. This calling range is quite strong, so I imagine that I have to be quite careful. So I definitely would go for a block or a check. And I probably like to mostly block here, because this hand definitely doesn't want to check fold, and it's also, I think, a bit too weak to check raise. So if I had the king in hearts, I would rather check and then be able to continue. And facing the raise, I imagine I just let this one go. Wonder if I can. Ace 5 is probably a bit too weak to value bet, but stronger ace size definitely can go for value. And yeah, I think, I mean, it's close, because if he reopens, he should go for a big sizing. So I think in his ace queen is also like always a free bet. So that's, I think, the main consideration that makes him a recreational player immediately. 8-7 close. Let's call. Facing the alphabet, interesting. Probably still get to bet quite wide for half pot sizing, and then snap check on a turn, which, to be fair, I think it's probably close to range check for him. mostly barreling, but I rolled pretty low. And definitely value betting now. The reason why I decided to check back here is I do need to check back quite some strong hands. And my hand is also, I mean, my hand definitely wants to bet most of the time, but I roll pretty passive. And if he has a hand like ace jack with a spade, I'm like, that hand has decent improvability versus my hand. And if I start, like basically when I bet the turn, I would be polarized, so I would size up to like half pot probably. And then he would have some snap folds, which are drawing dead to me, like king jack in hearts, for example, or even some ace-x. So the hands that he would continue with mostly would have a spade, or like jacks and tens with a spade. And those hands, I mean, while I'm beating those hands, they have decent equity versus me. While the hands that are drawing dead, I would fold out. So I think it's fine to not always bet this hand, but also gonna review it. Maybe it's just a pure bet, and I went for the for the funky check back. Also seems like the pool is dying. 8 entries still, so might cut the video. And he called me with fist. So it worked out fine this time, because if I bet the turn half pot, he is in a pretty close spot with this hand. Probably can argue to just fold it. Ace queen, theory needs to always call in those positions, but it's pretty close. Pretty nice flop, hopefully. But a great board for out of position. He has, he also has only ace queen, and of course kings and aces. The 4 and the deuce are really blanky. I never make sets on those, so it's actually a really bad board for me. Oh, I have 0% time banks, so I need to be careful here. Hope to not face a jam on a turn, because I would expect the jam to be criminally underbluffed. But of course with my hand I would have to call, because he can jam the same hand. He does check, and think I'm always stabbing. And because it's a forward pot, stabbing for a small sizing is definitely the way to go. And yeah, I think I might start sitting out then if the zoom pool is dying. And we have like 30 minutes. Gonna make sure to review some of those hands. Think there were quite some interesting in them. And yeah, hope you guys enjoyed the video. Make sure to like and subscribe, and see you in the next one. Bye.